people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. Ryan Garcia undergoes surgery for right hand, out for up to 6 weeks. Ryan Garcia is back on the mend, this time to allow a hand injury to heal after his latest procedure. Boxing Scene has confirmed that the 26-year-old boxing superstar underwent successful surgery on Tuesday to clean up lingering damage to his right hand. Garcia was cleared, to an extent, after his visit with renowned orthopedic surgeon in LA, California. The caveat is that he must now allow another 5 to 6 weeks for his hand to fully heal before he can resume his career, meaning he will likely miss out all of the summer months and won't be cleared to fight, healed up, until either the fall or winter, which is what I expected anyway. Today's pugilist, especially one that makes 7 figures a fight like Ryan, doesn't keep the busiest schedule anyway, to where anyone should have been expecting Ryan to come back in a jiffy. I didn't. Hand injury or no hand injury, I wasn't expecting Ryan to come back until much later on in the year, after the humiliation that he suffered in Times Square. Sports Illustrated's Chris Mannix was the first to report that Garcia was due for surgery on Tuesday. Garcia, 24-2 with 20 knockouts, ultimately injured both hands prior to and during his eventual May 2nd unanimous decision defeat to Rolando Romero at New York City's famed Times Square. The right hand damage was suffered during training camp, though Garcia did his best to fight through the pain to avoid canceling the high-profile fight which headlined the DAZN pay-per-view event. He injured his left hand early in the bout with the Vegas Romero, 17-2 with 13 knockouts, in addition to suffering a second-round knockdown en route to the lopsided loss. So now you know what they're gonna do. They're gonna latch onto this and use this as an excuse to absolve Ryan of his humiliation, that he was widely expected by everyone to dispatch Rolly Romero, and he fought like he didn't have a pulse. They're gonna say it's because of the injury. They needed a narrative to run with, and now they have one. Garcia and Romero combined threw just 490 punches on the night, which at the time was the third fewest in CompuBox history. Garcia threw just 48 power punches on the night, the second fewest ever in that category since CompuBox began tracking data 40 years ago. Plans for a rematch with Devin Haney, who outpointed Jose Ramirez in a dull affair on the same show, were in place with a Garcia win. The two met last April 20th and a bout initially won by Garcia before the verdict was changed to a no contest, after he tested positive for the banned substance, Osterin. The rematch is not dead yet altogether, though Garcia's defeat, coupled with a general disinterest on his side, along with Golden Boy Promotions, already threatened to delay those plans. The injury and subsequent surgery adds another layer, though it was also a blessing in disguise. Garcia injured the same hand in 2021 and visited Cedars-Sinai Joby Surgery Center for an emergency procedure. Tuesday's surgery helped clean up any lingering effects. What Ryan really needs, more than a Devin Haney rematch, is a Rolly Romero rematch, and it's questionable whether or not he can get it, as Rolly has his sights set on the winner of Pacquiao versus Barrios. I don't know what Rolly made from the Ryan Garcia fight, but I do imagine he made good money. To get the rematch, they're gonna have to offer Rolly even more. Golden Boy and Garcia will have to huddle with Turkey El Sheikh, who financed the Times Square event and who originally planned to host Haney versus Garcia 2 at the start of Riyadh's season this October. A follow-up meeting is expected to come once Garcia is cleared for training and has a firm timetable on his ring return at full health. I believe They need to get in contact with Rolly now if they want to redeem Ryan Garcia and allow him to resume his career on a high. He's got to get his lick back with Rolly, and it's not going to be cheap. He's in a power position. He's in a driver's seat. He has options. He has a secondary WBA title that should Jaron Ennis move up and vacate his 2 full titles, Rolly could see himself elevated to full WBA welterweight champion. Could go have a unification match with the winner of Pacquiao versus Barrios, all in-house at the PBC. The situation for Ryan is growing desperate. So desperate that even though Oscar De La Hoya completely blew off the idea that Ryan should fight Devin Haney again, Ryan himself is actually entertaining that rematch. He took to his social media earlier today and said, "Let's do it, Bill. You still need to get this back, correct?" You know it's bad if Ryan is actually pushing for the Haney rematch while Oscar's against it. The tables have quickly turned on Ryan. Where before it was the Haneys looking for a rematch with him, now he's looking for a rematch with them. I'd call that karma. Things going so bad, so fast for Ryan. But that's what happens when the foundation for your success is all built on a lie, built on Osterin and playing games with the weight. I should say, Ryan is not a good boxer. He's not a good fighter. The bit about his hand being messed up, that's not what costed him the Rolly Romero fight. Ask a boxer. They'll tell you. They go into most fights with lingering injuries, wear and tear from years and years of training camps. It's not different for Ryan. Because his hand was hurting or whatever it was, that's not what costed you that Rolly Romero fight. Does that sound familiar? The fight between him and Devin has lost all its value. Nobody wants to see it. At least I don't want to see it. And the Haneys seem to have their sights set on somebody else. Teofimo. Now that Jaron Ennis is set to move up to 154, effectively foregoing a Teofimo Lopez fight, Lopez versus Haney comes to the forefront again. That's a conversation again. Lopez isn't happy. Word on the street is that he stood to make more for the Jaron Ennis fight than he now stands to make for the Devin Haney fight, and thus he sabotaged it by taking shots at Turkey. Sabotaged the Haney fight.
And it got to a point where, again, I've not heard this from the Boots side, from Matchroom or whatever, but I'm told that in the end, Ennis decided that was a no-go, and that was the fight that Teofimo really wanted. And they had agreed, I guess, at least on, I don't know if the exact dollar figure, but they knew sort of the range of what they were going to make for that fight. And when the Ennis fight was not there, the money for the alternative, which was Haney, which is still a reasonable bout, was maybe not quite the exact same as what would have been there for the Boots Ennis fight. And so it feels like Teofimo kind of agreed to the Haney fight, but got kind of irritated that the money wasn't quite the same. And that sent him off the cliff into writing all the crazy tweets. And I saw the videos he did that, Turkey fired him, or I got fired from boxing. I mean, he's kind of maybe lost his mind a little bit. So the bottom line is, whereas the Haney camp, from what I am told, was good to go, agreed to, all set, let's do it. Then it became a little bit of a problem because I would imagine that Turkey was not too pleased by the things that Teofimo not only posted, but clearly, I guess, understood at some point it was not proper for him to do that and ended up deleting one of the tweets.
So the Haneys were on board to do this thing, and one thing you've got to give the Haneys is they're willing to fight the fights. From Ryan to Jose Ramirez to Teofimo Lopez, they're willing to fight the fights, albeit in a manner that doesn't please the crowd. But the story is that they were on board to do it, and all the friction is coming from Teofimo's side. But how do you reconcile Teofimo being willing to move up and fight Jaron Ennis, who I think is a lot more dangerous than Devin, then foregoing a Devin Haney fight, sabotaging a Devin Haney fight, the way that Bill Haney reconciled it? He's doing everything to not fight Devin, but of course you're not reporting that because it doesn't fit your narrative. Mr. Dan, not for real. Devin Haney himself, in so many words, stated, "I'll handle him," him being Teofimo Lopez, and he tagged Turkey LL Sheik in the tweet. Seemingly, he's operating as Turkey's henchman, Turkey's hitman, letting it be known that he would more than love to fight Teofimo. Turkey's enforcer, his mercenary for hire. A few passing thoughts? Turkey has to notice what a mess it is, working with American fighters as opposed to working with Russian fighters or British fighters. How much easier and how much smoother things go when the Americans are not involved. These little boys, these children, you can't get Boots to do a goddamn thing. You wanted him to fight Virgil at 154? He wouldn't do it. You wanted him to fight Teofimo at 147? He wouldn't do it. You tried to make the rematch, the big rematch between Ryan and Devin. Devin stunk out the joint while Ryan couldn't hold up his end of the bargain. He lost to the betting underdog. You try to get Teofimo in the mix, and the first thing he does is start taking shots at you, because the money for Devin isn't the same as the money for Boots, as if Teofimo is in any position to demand more money. You screw this relationship up, you burn this bridge, you're back at Top Rank, and what they're gonna do is sick Brian Norman on you. You will not make fighting Brian Norman what you might make fighting Devin. Even if it's not the exact number you want, it still likely pays better than a Brian Norman fight. And I happen to think that Brian Norman poses a greater threat to Teofimo than Devin. Devin is more accomplished. On paper, that's all well and good. But Devin doesn't knock people out. Brian does. Brian is naturally bigger than both, punches harder than both, and he's not there to finesse you. He's not there to fence and fiddle. He's gonna get all in your wheelhouse and he's gonna try to stop you, and you ain't big for 147. You struggled to hold back Steve Claggett. Just imagine how much harder it's gonna be to hold back Brian Norman. You better fight Devin Haney. You better mend fences with Turkey, because that's your best option. To get at the kind of money you haven't been getting at, the kind of money you want, the kind of money your fights don't generate, Turkey is your best bet. If you burn that bridge, you're out in the cold. And then what? It's a mess. Turkey has to notice it. The glaring difference between working with international fighters on the international stage and working with the Americans. All they do is bicker. All they do is argue and make a mess of everything while not holding up their end of the bargain and demanding more money. Now, I think that Devin is more the team player here because he's willing to act as Turkey's enforcer. And the story is that he was on board to fight Teofimo. All the friction is on Teofimo's side. Why would you then decide to start taking shots at Turkey of all people? All he's trying to do is give you a career high purse. Opportunities you weren't getting at Top Rank. Seemingly an opportunity you don't want, because you got one attitude for fights with other fighters and this attitude whenever Devin's involved. Are you afraid he's gonna beat you? How do you reconcile it? If he moves up and he loses to Boots Ennis, it's no harm, no foul, because Boots is a lot bigger than he is, whereas losing to Devin, I guess there are no built-in excuses. Devin moved up from 135 up to 142, 147, the same as you. There's no crutch to lean on, no excuses. Maybe that's the way it is. Or maybe Teofimo's just stupid. Damn stupid. Now, I myself am not all that enthused about a Haney versus Lopez fight. I figure Devin Haney can win a ho-hum points decision, but it won't be exciting. The hope is that what we saw in Times Square from Devin was not PTSD per se, not necessarily gun-shy, but careful, cautious, not going to take risks because he wants to secure the bag. The hope is that he will show up and show more in a Lopez fight than what he just showed in a Jose Ramirez fight, because to a lot of people, he did little more than run. He was running. To that effect, veteran trainer Stephen Breadman Edwards chimed in on running and runners. Like Devin.
Awful, man. That was a horrible performance. You know what I mean? I know some of it's on Canelo too, but
he said he thought he won.
Yeah, I mean, what is he supposed to say? I don't ever want to see a guy like that fight again, man. I like boxers, but that was bad.
And talk to us about the thin line between running and actual ring generalship. Where do you draw the line as a coach?
Ring generalship in boxing is a guy that's trying to apply his offense and score points and win the fight. A guy that's running is just simply trying to run the clock out. That's why he's called running. He's running the clock out just so he can get a decision and get a moral victory. He has no interest in scoring points and winning the fight. His only interest is not taking any punishment and not being hit at all. So he's willing to sacrifice all of his offense to win the fight just so he can say he didn't get knocked out.
On that much, I agree with Stefan. Categorically, that's what a runner is. Essentially a guy who's trying to run out the clock and survive. So focused on not getting hurt or not getting hit, they're not doing any hitting of their own, and thus they're only really fighting half a fight. What I like to describe as a minimalist's approach to boxing. Boxing on a budget. You're acting like there's only so many punches you can throw in a round or only so many punches you can throw in a fight, like you're saving them for later. That's definitely what William Skull did, but I think that's also what Devin did. Stefan disagrees.
So what Shakur and Devin do, that's not running. That's boxing. Yeah. You know what I mean? It may not be crowd friendly, but they're boxing. They're landing punches. They're hitting you more than you're hitting them. They're applying point scoring while they're just not taking a lot of punches. What William Skull was doing, he was running around the ring just like waiting for the rounds to end just so he can go 12 rounds and just say, you know, that was a little different. You know, and I like boxers personally, but that was bad.
There's no difference, there's no difference between what Skull did and what Haney did?
No.
Now, there is where I disagree with Stefan. Williams' performance with Canelo was not that different from Devin's performance with Jose Ramirez. Entire spells where Devin's just going from one end of the ring to the other, then the other, without throwing a punch, without landing a punch, without trying to. Jose may be a pressure guy, but he's a pressure guy with slow feet. Notoriously slow feet, to where if you're young and you're sharp and your reflexes are there, you should be able to light him up and get out of the way. Where Devin Haney only did half of that. All he did was get out of the way. Most of the time, that's all he was doing, was just getting out of the way and staying out of the way.
I knew Haney was winning his fight, and I knew Skull was losing his. Okay. From the outside looking in, I said Haney's winning every round. When I was looking at Skull, I'm like, does he really think he's winning this fight? So, no, it's not. Devin's performance, and it was not a great performance, but it was still better than that.
Devin is more guilty of being a runner to me than Shakur. Shakur doesn't fight like that all the time, the way he did with De Los Santos and Nicotila. He didn't fight that way with Jamel Herring or Robson Conceição. Didn't fight that way with Oscar Valdez or Yoshino. At 135, Josh Padley. That terminology, runner, I think it applies more to Devin than Shakur, but it really doesn't help Devin's situation that you're only as good as your last fight. That's what they say. And in Devin's last fight, to a lot of people, he did little more than run. So I myself am not all that enthusiastic at the prospect of him facing Teofimo. I believe he can win, and I know how. That's the problem. It's not by making it an action fight. It's by limiting his output, staying behind the jab, moving and punching, and staying on the outside of striking distance of Teofimo. It's not going to be an entertaining fight, but I do believe it's a fight that Devin can win. In ho-hum fashion, it's not too late for Teofimo to make amends with Turkey. If Canelo made amends with Turkey, then so can Teofimo, and they can get this one over the line. We might get it. But Turkey must now be experiencing the same headache that any promoter in America experiences dealing with these fighters, these petulant, immature, selfish fighters. Entitled. When he first entered into the boxing space, at first, he was dealing with international fighters primarily. It's not until much later on that he starts dealing with the Americans. He has to notice the difference. I wouldn't mind it at all if he kept the American fighters out of his shows. For the time you're wasting on Teofimo, you could have made Yanni Beck versus Adames. You could have made Boachuk versus Murtazaliev. Without the headaches, without the tweets, the back and forth on social media, you can make great fights without any Americans. Maybe he'll adopt that strategy in the future.